theory surrounding the entity comes from the initial question of who created the gates in Chrono Trigger. At first, Chrono and crew believe it's Lavos creating the gates through its potent energy, messing with the time-space continuum. But as you continue deeper into the game, you as the player come across a number of clues that would discredit that assumption. Thus, the mysterious entity begins to form. As you traverse through time, Chrono, Marl, and Luca come across a chilling video in the distant future. It depicts an alien being erupting from the Earth and raining down destruction upon the surface. One could say it was pure coincidence that they viewed this damning evidence of a dangerous being. However, the gate locations and the timing of events were tactfully placed in order to guide them to these locations. A being like Lavos, if anything, would discourage such discoveries as it could thwart its plans. Our next big clue comes from Robo after he grows the forest for Fiona. After 400 years of work, you find him enshrined in Fiona's shrine in present-day 1000 AD. When you reactivate him and tidy him up, he said he had a lot of time to think and, while connected to nature with his regrowing of the forest, believed that an entity created the gates, wishing for them to witness the events unfold that would consume their world. He also says this entity may have wanted to relive its past and created the gates in order to do so. The interesting wisdom of Isla comes into play where she says, "Isla, no! When people die, elders say, see whole life pass by!" With Frog adding, "'Tis true that mortals do relive their most profound memories before death claimeth them, yet those memories are most often sad ones." Seeing as Chrono and his friends know the fate of the Earth results in its death, we can assume that the entity may be the planet itself, or something close to that. This theory of the entity being the Earth is supported by the original Japanese dialogue during the final battle, where it is stated that Lavos is a parasite feeding off the energy of the planet. The line that Marl originally spoke was lost in the North American translation and reads as follows: "That's it. Ever since it fell in primeval times, it's been under us, absorbing all the living things on this planet the whole time." Some theories out there connect the entity being Shala, who is fused to the Dream Devourer. Although the existence of the Dream Devourer is created after the original Chrono Trigger game and appears in the DS remake, there is some validity to the argument. Shala has an intense amount of power and has proven her influence on the world even from outside time. This is shown in Chrono Cross, where Shala creates a magnetic storm that causes Serge to eventually enter the Sea of Eden and interact with the frozen flame, forcing a series of events to come to life. There's also the fact that Dinopolis was mysteriously dragged into play, which could also be Shala's doing. If she can achieve these sort of feats from the outer rim of time, then she could have created the gates and guided the group along in order to stop Lavos. Her desire to correct what her kingdom had done could be the catalyst needed to form the gates and allow for time travel to happen. The purpose of the entity is to restore order to the planet, to resume the natural flow of life that is not influenced by a parasitic being bent on spurring evolution and absorbing the potential result from its meddling. While Lavos holds a power beyond human imagination, tempting some to behold such wonders such as immortality, Lavos' potential is not natural, and it brings about a change that is not needed. With the wise words of the great Isla, "Isla fight while alive, win and live, lose and die, rule of life, no change rule." The first real questions about this theory can be taken from a quote by Masato Kato, the director, when he was asked about Chrono and Marl's fate not being explained properly in Chrono Cross. We know that Luca was murdered prior to Cross's story, so what can we assume for the other characters? Kato says that the fall of the Kingdom of Guardia and the rise of Porre's militarism on the main continent, there's a good chance the two friends may have been involved in some kind of incident. He continues this in another interview, saying that there was a large influence from outside the original flow of history. This outside influence had helped Porre become a military power. However, the details about this nation's rise was left out of Cross, as it didn't have anything directly related to the game's story. Although it was left out of Cross, it is a substantial point in time that's obscured and seemingly missing from both Trigger and Cross entirely. It's only in Radical Dreamers that we witness the presence of Porre's Legion and their hunger for power, where, in the end, they take the frozen flame after following your group in and start a vigorous search for Kid and McGill. But seeing as that game was only released in Japan, the rest of the world was left in the dark. That's when the PlayStation port came out, in the form of Final Fantasy Chronicles, a bundle that had Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger in one case. The first of the Porre connections comes right at the end of the game, in the ending FMV. During the scene, we see two men fighting, and the words 1005 AD, the fall of the Kingdom of Guardia. The long-haired man wins the fight, and a flag with a chimera is shown, which was identified as Porre's. More words appear, stating that a Masamune was taken by Porre, and it has not been seen ever since. Now you may be wondering, why does Dalton, that moron from the Dark Ages, have anything to do with the army of Porre? Why does Porre wipe out Guardia? Well, in the FMV, although it is very ambiguous, it is said that the long-haired man fighting is Dalton. The only proof at the time was that he was a character with long hair that hated Chrono and crew, since at the end of Trigger, Chrono and Marl get married, and he is assumed to have become the king of Guardia. That would be a good enough reason for Dalton to seek revenge. This Dalton plus Porre connection is made glaringly obvious in the DS remake of Chrono Trigger in the Dimensional Vortex dungeon that was added to the game. In it you can find and fight Dalton, known as the Once King Dalton. When you defeat him, he says, "I'll raise the greatest army the world has ever seen in Porre, and use it to wipe your pitiful little kingdom off the map." Personally, I think that's a pretty weak way to connect the two, but hey, it happened. So with that bold statement, it's safe to assume that yes, Dalton is the one in the FMV, and yes, he does indeed destroy the entire kingdom. Now, what's in it for Porre to destroy Guardia? Their history seems fairly alright, and in present time they have a ferry that connects the two. It seems like the two respect one another, but this doesn't quite factor in Chrono and his group's influence on the area. There are a number of influential events that happened in Porre that could have contributed to this seemingly abrupt hatred towards Guardia. 1. Robo and Fiona's villa. This is the side quest where you regrow the forest in Porre after the war with the Mystics in the Middle Ages. You leave Robo until you travel to present time, 1000 AD, when you reunite with Robo, with him in a shrine dedicated to Fiona, and he is reactivated by Luca. During this time, Porre could have studied Robo and developed technology beyond the present-day capabilities. This evidence is shown in Chrono Cross, where Porre is known for setting up cannons and having firearms for their soldiers. Number 2. Due to the fact that Porre stole the Masamune at the end of the FMV, could attribute to the desire for power to reclaim the legendary sword. Without Chrono and crew mending the broken sword and restoring it to its former glory, they inadvertently create a reason, an object of want, if you will, for the Porre military to flatten Guardia. Seeing as the Masamune was originally resting in the Porre region, in the Denadoro Mountains, some could see of it as Guardia stealing their treasure and fueling some nationalistic desire for the sword. 3. Another event that happens in the game comes in the form of the Sunstone. In a side quest, you must put the Moonstone in the Sun Keep for many years to power it up and forge a new weapon and armor. Partway through this process, the Sunstone goes missing and is easily spotted in a house in Porre. The mayor has taken it, and after a simple trade, you can get it back. But what if it was never retrieved? Studies could have taken place on the stone and its long-stored power could have been unlocked. Even if it was taken away, there could be the idea to look for more artifacts similar to the Sunstone, thus creating an interest in otherworldly items and their possible discovery. There is proof of Porre's need to find artifacts, with Lucia's mention of it when you find Grobek's strong-arm element. She says, "I cannot believe this. It is an ancient super weapon. I don't recall my brother talking about this. About a super weapon that was excavated near an ancient ruin. According to him, there were not enough parts to complete it. But this shows otherwise. This would have been Grobek's exclusive weapon. I must bring Grobek here." There is also the obvious desire to seek the Frozen Flame, an ancient artifact of myth that could grant power and immortality. This is the main goal of Porre in Radical Dreamers. While there are many speculations as to why Porre became powerful, and why Dalton of all people led them to take down Guardia, there has never been a firm answer as to why. All we know is that Porre got hold of some advanced technology and utilized it to their advantage, expanding out to the El Nido continent in Chrono Cross without Guardia's looming presence. It all began eons ago, when man's ancestors picked up a shard of a strange red rock. Its power, which was beyond human comprehension, cultivated dreams. In turn, love and hate were born. Only time will see how it all ends. Dreamstone, as players of Chrono Trigger know, is the red rock used to forge the Masamune, the rock that symbolizes leadership within Isla's tribe. It is a powerful mineral from the earth that draws similarities to the Frozen Flame in a number of ways. But the real question is, are they the same thing? The first time Japanese players got to see the Frozen Flame was in Radical Dreamers, where it takes on a form of a scarlet crystal, taking on a similar shape and color of the Dreamstone. It's hard not to deny the sameness of the two minerals when it comes to physical attributes. There are also comparable levels of power, seeing as items like the Masamune and the Mammon Machine were made from Dreamstone. It is worth mentioning that both minerals can absorb Lavos' energy, although in two different ways. The Frozen Flame is a shard off Lavos, and retained a kind of sentience, while Dreamstone was already already in existence before Lavos' fall from the skies, as the crew acquired some to repair the Masamune. Despite the mismatched timings, Dreamstone is said to absorb Lavos' energy much like the frozen flame, leading many to believe that they are made of the same material. However, there's evidence against this seemingly obvious closeness between the two. The director of Chrono Cross, Masato Kato, would have had to insert the idea of the frozen flame in the Chrono Trigger game, which can be possibly hinted at in the quote I started with for this section. As we know, the frozen flame brought on the evolution of human intelligence, influencing the early humans to create zeal with their newly cultivated dreams, which is what the book in Zeal mentions. This could not be the influence of Dreamstone, as we can see from our interactions with Isla that it never spurred on a sense of urgency to evolve and build. Although with Lavos' influence imbuing the mineral beyond Isla's time, over time it could have created a special strain of energy within a special type of Dreamstone, creating the frozen flame. This theory is supported by Ultimania, the authoritative guide to Chrono Cross in Japan, where they state that the frozen flame and Dreamstone are one and the same. It would not explain, however, the sentience and strong connection to Lavos, serving as a means of communication between those on the surface and Lavos itself. No matter how unique a Dreamstone could become, it is hard to believe that it would become a living organism. After reading all of the information provided in various articles and websites, I personally believe the frozen flame is a part of Lavos, a shard from its shell. And while yes, Dreamstone is connected to Lavos once it has fallen into the planet by absorbing Lavos' energy, and that it also has wondrous powers when forged, it cannot compare to the high magical status of the frozen flame, the item that could power all of Chronopolis and could develop the minds of apes to create the incredible achievement of zeal. This is exactly what Lavos wanted, as in the endgame we see that it's absorbed all the DNA of all living organisms on the planet.
So let's get into a really interesting theory I came across that requires you to make a few leaps of faith, but it sounds really solid. After reading the letter from Luca to Kid, there's one line that gets the gears turning in my head. Is there some kind of connection between Magus and Serge? Based on pretty much all in-game evidence at the time, it doesn't have a leg to stand on. Now, Myra just talked about the enigma that is Magus, but let's go back to that juicy piece of dialogue from Luca's letter for a look at one more angle, trip down the rabbit hole. Perhaps he's already found you and is there by your side as you read this. If so, hello, Janus. Please take care of my little sister for me. Now, we don't have enough time to go all in on this, but there is a great theory out there from Jaren Jove, and we'll include a link in the description for you to check it all out. But here we'll try and summarize. This theory is all about the lengths to which Janus will go to find his sister Scala. This theory hinges on the new scenario introduced in the DS version of Chrono Trigger. The introduction of the Dream Devourer and another Magus opens things up significantly. This other Magus is likely responsible for the creation of the Dream Devourer, which is a fused Scala and Lavos hybrid. The theory posits that Magus attempted to summon Scala back to antiquity, but in doing so also summoned Lavos, fusing the two and hurling them to the darkness beyond time. Magus then reaches out to Balthazar for help, and wanting to help his prince, he agrees. And the two begin plans to build the Fate system. The whole thing is set up to reunite Magus and Scala, and in this theory, Magus does some shady stuff to make it happen. He is likely the one responsible for overthrowing Guardia, but he sets up Dalton to get all the credit to avoid detection. This theory also makes a case for the Fate system needing souls to operate, and Magus harvests some souls to keep it running at full power, including Chrono and Marl. Yikes. Then Fate, not the entity or whatever, summons Wazuki and Miguel to Chronopolis, and performing another bit of body swapping, puts Magus's soul into 4-year-old Serge's body, setting up the next part of the plan. Wazuki is driven to madness by Fate, and as Fate controls everything, this kind of makes sense, and essentially attempts to drown Serge/Magus. Having Kid/Scala save Serge/Magus from drowning creates a strong connection between the two. This is reinforced when Serge saves Kid from the burning orphanage in the flashback. So it sets up some causal loops that work to strengthen the relationship between Kid and Serge so that they will want to find one another again. So the whole plot, once everything is factored in here, is Magus trying to save Scala. All of Balthasar's work serves this purpose, and by setting up specific time loops and basically setting the world on fire in the process, the two are reunited. Now, this is not nearly long enough an explanation of this theory, but it at least gives a look at one of the many fantastic theories that have been cobbled together around this series.
While the title of this theory is lame, I thought I was a goddamn genius with it, as it explains exactly what this part is about. The beach bum enemy in Chrono Cross was originally going to represent Nu from Chrono Trigger. Their blue color, along with their fairly similar physical traits, despite the aquatic theme going on in Cross, we can reasonably believe that the beach bum could be an altered Nu. Now that alone isn't much to prove this theory, but when the game purposely places a beach bum near the Neo Epoch, found in Viper Manor underneath Balthazar's desk, it's hard not to completely believe this theory. The scene itself is a direct reference to when Balthazar greets you as a Nu, having uploaded his consciousness to the creature. Not only that, but when you speak to the Nu, it asks the player if they'd like to change their name. The same thing asked by the Nu in 65 million BC. That and the last piece of evidence comes in the form of Chrono Cross's code, where the beach bum was going to be a playable character that had its own dialogue icon in the demodisk's data, along with its original design being called Nu. Case closed! Radical Dreamers or Chrono Cross? Which is the true sequel? The answer to that is, well, neither of them to some extent? Let me explain. Radical Dreamers was completed in only 3 months under a very rushed production schedule. It was originally set out to conclude the unfinished plot points left from Chrono Trigger. This connection, however, was left until the very end of the game by Masato Kato, the director, scenario, and scriptwriter. He went on to say that, "I was just making up the story while inputting data. When I finally realized the connection of the identities of Kid and McGill near the final stage of development, I even amazed myself, saying, 'So that's who they were.'" Laughs. Ha ha ha. Also, since there were issues with the media, the connections between Radical Dreamers and Chrono Trigger were intentionally left blurred in the background, so that it'd only be recognizable by those who would understand. While he did make the connection in the end with the fate of Shala, the stress of the production scheduling left him feeling that it was unfinished. Later, when concluding his work on Xenogears, Masato got into talks about redoing Radical Dreamers properly. Thus, the idea of Chrono Cross was born, and the project was named the Dream Project, and not Chrono Trigger 2, as many thought it would be. Chrono Cross is a semi-remake of Radical Dreamers, a game that many people had no knowledge of. From this missing link, many concluded that Cross was the sequel to Trigger. I mean, it had many small references for fans to pick at, and the undeniable story of Kid being Shala. Heck, Luca's name is even shown in the opening cutscene. While many of you are probably writhing at the fact that I stated that neither are sequels, the intent was there from the director, but not the rest of the team. In an interview with the development team, it's hard to ignore the fact that they repeatedly state that Chrono Cross is not a sequel to Chrono Trigger. The development team had this to say: "Our stance has been to create a completely new and different world from the ground up. Our main objective for Chrono Cross was to share a little bit of Chrono Trigger worldview, while creating a completely different game as a means of providing new entertainment to the player." When asked about alienating loyal fans of Chrono Trigger, the development team went on to say, "Of course, the fans of the original are very important, but what innovation can come about when you're bound to the past?" They went on to mention Radical Dreamers serving as a bridge between the games, but since many people didn't know about that game, they had to make sure players were able to enjoy Chrono Cross without being fully aware of the connections made in Radical Dreamers to Chrono Trigger. This is probably why Cross's connections feel distant to Trigger's. So much so, in order to build a strong connection to the game, Masato Kato filled in some gaps. Masato didn't know there was going to be a Chrono Trigger port to PlayStation, finding out halfway through Cross's completion. He attended meetings on the animated movies inserted in the game, and had various talks with the porting publisher on how to connect Trigger with Cross using bits of the ending movie. This would take on the form as the child Luca adopts and the invasion of Guardia by Porre. You could argue that since Radical Dreamer's intentions was to be a sequel of sorts by addressing loose plot points from Trigger, and that Chrono Cross is a remake of Dreamers, that technically Cross is a sequel. But without Dreamers' influence, it would have never become what it is today. The two games together, Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross, make one whole sequel. On their own, neither could be a true sequel, and while in my personal opinion, Radical Dreamers holds a stronger direct connection to events from Chrono Trigger, the fact that the game was rushed and the man who birthed the idea didn't see a connection until the very end by chance makes it feel, like he said, unfinished.
Video games can take their inspiration from a number of sources. It's not surprising to find little pieces of other works in a game. For the Chrono series, and in particular Chrono Cross, I'm seeing some stuff here that makes me think of John Milton's Paradise Lost. Now, I don't actually know if Paradise Lost is a story commonly read in Japan, so it's hard to know if this theory holds much weight. But there are certainly enough references to it in pop culture to hint that maybe it is a text that some are familiar with. The paradise in Milton's epic is a place where Adam and Eve can live under the auspices of God, which in many ways resembles El Nido under the watchful eye of the fate computer. Harl and the dragons represent Satan and his army who seek entry into paradise to claim it. This isn't really a simple good versus evil situation though, as neither side is truly righteous or devilish, and at times it is a little hard to tell who might actually be the bad guy. Now, there is a very interesting line in Book 4 of Milton's work, which makes mention of the one thing that can lead to Adam and Eve's banishment, one fatal tree in Eden, known as knowledge. And following that, can it be sin to know? Can it be death? Now, in the context of Chrono Cross, this fatal tree in Eden, could it not be Chronopolis in the Sea of Eden? And can it be sin to know? Well, yes. Knowing about the fate computer and the power of time travel could be death. Not only in the sense of characters who could die, but also if we think about the way in which time travel works in this series, when timelines are changed, the timeline that was supposed to exist ceases to. It is discarded and sent to the darkness beyond time, though an example of this remains in the Dead Sea. Knowledge and practice of time travel could lead to death of a timeline. At Nadia's Bell in the Twisted Ruins of the Dead Sea, Miguel explains this to Serge. In Paradise Lost, Adam is met by the Archangel Michael and given a look at futures that could exist, expressing that there are many ways in which one can meet their end, a line Miguel more or less uses in his monologue. But Miguel also offers hope that there could be a way to change this future. This point in the story, Serge is also refusing Eden, the paradise of a blissful, utopia, removed from all suffering. Serge must learn more to fix the dimensional rift. In Paradise Lost, the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Which points to the knowledge gained leading to bad times, until the chosen one, like, I don't know, Serge the Arbiter, acting as the greater man to restore the world. So essentially becoming a Jesus figure of sorts. The Eden that is the El Nido archipelago under fate will be lost, but a new, better future may result.
Isla's name possibly comes from a book series called Earth's Children by Jean M. Ale. The clan of the Cave Bear is the first in the series and introduces Isla as a young girl belonging to the titular clan who looks nothing like her peers, especially with her long golden hair, and that she has eyes the color of the sky. The series is set in Europe during the Upper Paleolithic era, after the date of the first ceramics discovered but before the last advance of glaciers. The books focus on the period of coexistence between the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals. The characters of Chrono Trigger were designed by Akira Toriyama based on sketches from the story planner Masato Kato. Kato drew characters for a cast of 8 playable characters, comprising of a male protagonist, the daughter of a fairy king, a tin robot, a monster man, an inventor girl, a demon king, a primitive girl, and an old sage. 6 of the initial ideas were reworked by Toriyama, while the old sage character was scrapped and the monster man was replaced by Toriyama's own frogman design. Some sources claim that the old sage was supposed to be Gaspar. The frozen flame may have been modeled after a sea slug called the nudibranch Phylodesmium poindemiae. Specchio has a form that most players won't see. You have to be between levels 1 and 9 to see it, and he takes the form of a primitive frog. The Millennial Fair was supposed to have an appearance in 2300 AD as well, with a futuristic look to it. However, it was scrapped, but in the demo version of Chrono Trigger, there were incomplete maps of it, as seen here. Certain aspects of Magus' character also appears to parallel the Islamic prophet Muhammad, who founded the religion of Islam in the early 600s AD and established the first Islamic state in the city of Medina in 622, which Medina village is named after in the game. The conflict between the mystics and the guardians also appears to parallel the Muslim-Christian conflicts of the Middle Ages, such as the Arab-Byzantine Wars and the Crusades. You know that blue pyramid thing on the map that only contains 2 treasure chests? Well, it was actually going to be an entire dungeon, but was unfortunately scrapped. The inside tiles look very similar to the Ocean Palace or the Black Omen, so they were probably just fused into that. Serge's default weapon, Sea Swallow, is believed to be a tribute to the NES game Ninja Gaiden, a game that Chrono Cross's producer also worked on. Irene Liu's codename in Ninja Gaiden was Sea Swallow. Marl's formal name, Nadia, is Marledia, or the equivalent spelling, in the Japanese game. Frog is Kaeru, a pun as it can both mean frog and to change. Magus is Mao, which translates to Demon King, and originating as a concept in Buddhism of obstacles that prevents one from achieving enlightenment. The true intent is that the Demon King, Magus, leads the mystics, translated roughly to demons in the Japanese version. Protodome was originally Promethedome, probably referencing Prometheus, Robo, as you find him there. Yay, we finished it finally!
Woo!
Woo! So take a guess, when do you think our game analysis document was first created to work online together?
Yikes, it must have been a couple months ago. I'm going to say it was probably sometime in March of this year?
No, earlier than that.
Oh, geez. So
Yeah.
How long was it?
I posted it on February 17th.
Oh my god.
Shit.
Wow.
And I'm just gonna put a note in for people actually listening to this who actually want to. Sabo and I are 8 hours apart, so he's 8 hours behind me, so it was a bitch trying to sort time working together and making sure our work schedules were alright.
Yeah, definitely. It was a challenge. It was a challenge.
Let's head right into the serious topics. You want to start it?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the process of linking together Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross and the mess of all of it. Yeah, so this series is pretty interesting. I mean, Chrono Trigger kind of stands on its own, you would think. You know, it's a pretty open and shut kind of story. It's nice. And Chrono Cross, like, I feel like for the most part, it starts out with very little connection to Trigger, and you're like, oh, okay, like, there's a couple of little nods, but it's, you know, it really is kind of its own thing. And then the further you get into the game, like, they just start trying to, like, hammer in more connections, and you're like, what's going on here? Like, there's big, like, dumps of plot and stuff, and,
yeah. See, I found the technical side when I was, like, researching shit. It seemed that the writer, Masato Kato, or however you say his name, I've said it, like, 10 billion different ways, it seems like he was like, oh, this is, like, nostalgia shit, I want Chrono Trigger back, and then the development team were like, no, we want to make a new game, and that kind of, like, they tried to, like, make an even middle ground, and it kind of just fucked up. So they're like,
interesting.
we'll like have little connections to Chrono Trigger, and then it seemed like also like the marketing team when the PlayStation port was coming out, they're just like, hey, come over here. We need to connect Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross so we can sell it better.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about what the kind of like what the director's vision was versus the rest of the production team. So that's that's pretty cool.
I went through a lot of like interview things, and you could just see like the total polar opposite. It's like, oh, I love Chrono Trigger, and this is what's gonna happen, and blah blah. And the development team are like, well, we were kind of wanting to maybe connect it a little, but we wanted to like venture out and do something new. And it's just like, oh, they didn't want him to do that. Oh. Okay. It's kind of sad reading it.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh.
Because you feel like it would have been better one way or the other. You know, like if it was very few connections, it could have been, it's kind of maybe its own thing.
Yeah.
Or if it had been kind of more of a direct sequel, you would have had like real deep connections kind of thing. Because it feels like a lot of dialogue that kind of connects the games just feels like it's just been put in there because like, oh, remember this thing? Oh, remember this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Here, Easter egg, Easter egg.
So I guess this kind of like, this ties into the question that you received from She Pudding about whether, you know, do we think that Chrono Cross would have been better received if it wasn't tied to Chrono Trigger?
Right, yeah. I'll just say the question that was given to us is, do you guys think Chrono Cross would have been better received if it hadn't been tied to Chrono Trigger? As in, they were treated as completely separate games. The few threads that connected them and could easily be removed and replaced. I personally love both games, but I was shocked to find I was in the minority. So, yeah. If they could have just left it alone and made it its own game, I think it would have, I don't know, gone a little bit smoother. Rather than shoving in like this weird plot of this woman trapped in a crystal in a creature in the end of time. It's just like, what? Kind of had like nothing to do with like the main plot, I found. I'm like, I remember the main plot being just dragons fighting dragons and shit.
And like, kind of like as She Pudding has put in their question there, that like the threads that do connect the games could have been kind of switched out, and it wouldn't have really, you know, it wouldn't have taken too much out of the game if their idea was to just focus on this parallel world thing, and one world is technology, one world is dragons, and
you mean nature. Dragons are nature, even though they're robots, apparently. Whatever.
and if it was just that, and then, you know, the whole point was to combine the two worlds again and kind of live in harmony or whatever, like, there's a plot there that makes sense, you know? And, but the moments where they try and connect it to Chrono Trigger, it is, you know, in my little synopsis of the Chrono Cross plot, those are definitely the exposition like dumps where it's just words being spat out at you to try and connect these two worlds, and it's like, well, I don't really need this, you know, the story is kind of holding up on its own. I don't need these weird connections to this classic game that I love so much.
Yeah, or if you're on the other field where you haven't played Chrono Trigger, you're just like, what the fuck is this old man talking about? Like,
what is any of this?
Whoa! Like, it would, like, I kind of want to play Chrono Cross not knowing what happened in Chrono Trigger just to see how much of a fucking mess it was.
Yeah, right. Because there are a lot of connections that seem like it would just be like lost on people that hadn't played Trigger.
Yeah. I kind of want to test it out on friends over here because they never got the European release. Never happened until the DS remake of Chrono Trigger. So yeah, instead they had Terranigma over here.
Good game.
Which we emulated anyway, but whatever.
Yes.
Yar. But yeah, no, I have a friend that actually messaged me and they're like, I've never played this game, and it's interesting to listen about it, and I'm like, damn, I can't use it on her now. I can't force her to play it. She knows who she is. She'll be hearing this probably. Hello! Person that starts with an R.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, like, I would be very interested to see someone's reaction. Like, maybe even She Pudding could put something in this, because it seems like they played maybe Chrono Cross first. I don't know. I'll have to ask them.
That'd be interesting if that's how they played the games. But yeah, I think, you know, I mean, likes both games, and you know, after replaying Cross recently for this video, it's not a bad game. It's not a bad game. Like there's good elements to it for sure, and you know, the plot is interesting. But yeah, the tie-in stuff, I don't know. It didn't quite work for me.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I played Cross, but I do remember enjoying it, because I'm a sucker for, like, fight the elemental whatever, so this time it was the elemental dragons. It's like, oh yeah, I get to go to the leaf world, and now I get to go to the earth world. It's like, oh, it's so lame, but I like it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably move on to the next question. So, this question is, did Balthazar pull the biggest fucking keikaku ever?
Yo.
And he fucking did. Okay, I have a list here, and I have to say.
Okay.
So this is like the timeline of Balthazar's fucking insane plan. So he obviously gets blasted into the future, and he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna study Lavos and stuff. So he makes Chronopolis, and then he purposely makes it crash back into antiquity. There, it pulled Dinopolis and the Dragonians into the timeline. Like, how does he know that the Dragonians exist? Like, okay, whatever. So, the reason he pulls in the Dragonians is because their technology has the ability to make the Chrono Cross, which is what is needed to save Shala, Scala, whatever you want to call her, because we call them different things every time.
Yeah, that was great.
Yes. He intentionally created a rebellious circuit with Luca's help within Fate to prevent total control over the frozen flame, for whatever reason. To maybe stop his creation from going nutso. He expected Serge to be born and then eventually control the frozen flame. Like, I know that Fate was controlling, like, the inhabitants and stuff like that, but, like, I don't know. Like, that seems a bit far-fetched. This whole thing seems really far-fetched. Anyways, he knew the Fate computer would pursue Serge and murder him. He planned Serge's murder. He planned it from this fucking bullshit. Then he enacted Project Kid to go and save him, so that they could split the fucking dimensions and allow an active pedestal at the Divine Dragon Falls. He then knew he would need Serge's body for the Dragon Tier to be used, because Lynx would have wanted to take over his body because he was the Arbiter, so he would need to switch his body. Like, how he knew that the Dragon Tier did that, whatever. The use of the tier allowed the existence of the tier of love and hate in both dimensions to merge to make the Chrono Cross to save Shala and reunite the dimensions. Like, what?
All of that, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's why?
Crazy. Like,
just give up.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of ties into the really interesting theory that Serge might be kind of like some kind of reincarnation, or some version of Janus or
Janus.
Janus.
Oh, Janus.
And the idea that Balthazar ultimately is serving Shala, Scala, and Janus, and the whole idea being that he's got to try and save these two kids who he's loyal to, because they're the royal family of Zeal, and so he does literally everything he possibly can to save them, reunite them, and that's his motivation is to do that, and it requires all of this nonsense that we were just talking about.
Like, dude, that's dedication to the fucking royal family.
Dedication.
Yeah, like, yo. I went into the future, blew this shit back to your time, created all this bullshit, created an impossible item. Impossible item to make this happen, and play a song for you to get out of the fucking Time Devourer. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yo, promote me.
Yeah, it makes you seeing that makes you think that the other sages from that time really just kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, Melchior, I made a sword, and Gaspar, like, what did he even do? He didn't do anything. He just got blasted to the end of time.
He had the C trigger. Don't worry.
Oh, he had the C trigger.
He had the C trigger, which he created. Apparently.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then their
Well.
random friend Beckler just makes clones.
Yo. Shoutouts to Beckler.
Yeah, like seriously, who's Beckler? Like,
Who?
I want to know his backstory, his origin story. Like, is he from Zeal as well? Like, yo.
You know, it would, you know, I wouldn't discount that. Like,
No.
there's absolutely no evidence that ties into anything. But the fact that even, I guess Gaspar probably knows about him because he's at the end of time and he can kind of observe everything.
It's like, what the fuck is that? It's like a fucking floating head that goes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch that guy.
Yeah, that guy's interesting. I'm gonna follow him.
Anyway,
yeah.
we should stay on more serious topics here.
Yes.
So we have legacy and impact.
Yeah, Trigger definitely is the one that has the stronger legacy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, it was such a super team that came together for this project.
Yes.
So, I mean, you had Sakaguchi, Uematsu,
For
Mitsuda was in as well.
Yeah, Uematsu saved Mitsuda because Mitsuda like drilled himself to like having a stomach ulcer when making the soundtrack. So Uematsu kind of stepped in. He's like, "I'll finish it for you, bro."
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Oh, thank you."
So you have all these guys that are like basically household names after this game comes out, and they were all working on the same project. You know, you've got Toriyama doing the art. You know, like,
beautiful.
How do you get all of these amazing people to come together on a project like this? Like, it was a dream team, and that's I think why it stands the test of time, is because it was these, you know, like just visionary dudes who came together and put out something that was, for the time, really like unreal.
Visionary dudes. Yeah.
Visionary dudes.
I 100%, yeah, agree with that. And it seems like, I don't know, because it was like the early years of like, I don't know, Square and it getting its feet and stuff, that I think, like, I don't know, a lot of people hadn't gotten their names yet out there, except for like Uematsu and shit. So like everyone was like trying to, I don't know, do really fucking well and hospitalize themselves to be recognized. It's just like, oh my god, crazy Japanese people.
Yeah, and I guess, like, you know, with maybe the exception of Miyamoto, there weren't like a lot of people that were that well known for making video games. It was just kind of like these anonymous people. A lot of people used pseudonyms, and they weren't even allowed to put their real names in the credits.
Oof.
And so this is kind of like this is like the first kind of wave of like being like a famous video game creator. And so now we're in this age where like big names that get attached to projects, you're like, oh, it's that guy, it's that chick. Like you're really excited to see who's involved in a project. And this is kind of one of the first ones where it was like big names on the box, basically.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the serious questions from, and I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your name, Misteltain?
I think that's right.
Misteltain?
Looks right to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so you suggested all of these questions, and we're just going to go through them. Maybe not as detailed as what we just went through, but, I don't know.
We'll give it a go.
We'll probably go off tangent, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, first question, who do you find to be the strongest character, as in their character and not, like, physical strongness? My choice for this, and it's very ironic, is Robo, who is a robot. But he has the most fleshed out character in the series to me, because he has like 2 major side quests dedicated to him. So he has like the Fiona's like growing land thing, and then the whole Mother Brain thing where you learn his real name is Prometheus. He rebels against the Mother Brain that is eventually turned into Fate at Chrono Cross. Oh god. Yeah, but like he just seems like, I don't know, the most fleshed out despite being metal.
That's really cool.
To me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I mean, yeah, and especially considering he's a robot, you know, like you would think that he's supposed to be the most cold and calculating and with the least amount of humanity, and then it turns out that he might, you know, be the most human of us all, kind of thing. Like, Wow,
And
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's probably because like his origin is he was a robot, so he probably doesn't know much, and then he like grows with your party, and it's just like, oh, you are like a human.
Right. We get to see the fullest kind of like evolution of a character,
Yeah,
because
the development of Robo.
Yeah, because everyone else kind of comes in with their traits already kind of intact.
Yeah, with their skin and their flesh.
Oh my god, I know. Seriously, it's so annoying, so basic.
God.
Yeah, he definitely learns a lot, and you're right. 2 side quests, because like the end game of Trigger, everyone just gets 1, except Robo, who gets 2, which is interesting.
Does Marl have one kind of? Is it the Rainbow Shell one? Because
I think hers is tied into Rainbow Shell. I think
that's not really like hers kind of.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Man, if I was gonna pick a strong character, I definitely agree with the Robo. That's pretty solid. I guess I would go with Luca. Just for the like kind of like unsung hero kind of aspect of it, like she doesn't get like the glitzy kind of role, I guess. You got your protagonist who's obviously stealing the spotlight, even though he didn't say a damn thing. And you got Marl, who kind of steps in as the love interest / like main heroine of Trigger.
Yeah,
but Luca
she's kind of just pushed aside. Like, oh, cool, you made a fucking telepad and made a fucking gate key. Bye.
So I mean, so she's got to work, her role, and I think she kind of does it quietly and does it well. And I mean, she comes up with a lot of kind of like key things that help move the plot along. Gate key and stuff like that. Just like she's that character that's always kind of pushing things forward in the right direction.
Yeah, she found Protodome. She repaired Robo. Told them to go to the factory, and then repaired him again because he got beat up. Yeah, gate key, figuring out shit. And
she does have a pretty significant role in behind the scenes, I guess, in Chrono Cross as well.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd go with that. I can't think of any. The thing that is unfortunate for Cross is I can't really think of a standout character, because you don't get a lot of like time to build the characters. I think it was one of my critiques of Cross in general, is that there are so many characters that you don't get a lot of story time with anyone in particular.
Nah.
I mean, I guess you got to go with one of the mains, and like Kid's pretty tough. She's been through quite a lot.
But then she's like missing for like half the game, so I don't know.
Then you don't really know, like what's her deal? She got brainwashed pretty easily by evil Serge.
Anyway, okay. Thoughts on lack of Toriyama involvement in the series or sequels? Sorry. And I put in brackets art dude just to remind myself of who it was.
Who was that? Oh yes.
Like, it kind of distanced Chrono Trigger from Cross and Radical Dreamers even more, because that's you saw in like the character little art when you put up the menu. Like, you see his art in their like portraits and stuff. So it's like, oh yeah, Chrono Trigger, and then you don't see it in Cross, and you're like, oh, maybe it's not the same game.
So that definitely sounds like one of the development team versus Kato, I guess, there, where it was like a maybe. It doesn't have to be exactly like Chrono Trigger. We want to do our own thing. We want to have characters with our own in-house artists working on it, kind of thing. And let's not reach out to this guy again. I think if the goal was to make the Chrono Cross a more direct kind of sequel to Trigger, they definitely should have used Toriyama art. But I guess the games are different enough that it's okay that someone else did the artwork for Cross instead.
Yep, that's the answer.
Yep.
On to the next one.
Yes.
What do you think of the game's societal impact? Nature and the environment. Don't fuck with nature.
Yeah, it was definitely from that time period where the big message was like, a balanced planet Earth kind of thing. Green movements were kind of in vogue at that time. You had shows like Captain Planet and stuff on TV. So,
Heart! Heart will do.
So yeah, like that kind of message that the game was trying to push was pretty common back then, and so it really, it fit with the time, I think.
And then like kind of follow-up question: what are their impacts on you, respectively? So, like impact of nature on me, I'm guessing is what the question is like.
Or maybe it's the game's impact on you, like.
Oh. Well, every fucking JRPG at that time was like, don't fuck with Earth. Earth is where we live and stuff. So, like, it was kind of almost like you kind of started ignoring it because people were telling you so much about it. You're like, fuck off! I can litter if I want, which I don't. I recycle loads. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that message, definitely kind of got, a little bit tired, especially because it's always presented the same way. But I guess if the question is like how the game impacted me, that was definitely one of the first RPGs that really sent me on the path to playing more RPGs. At that, back in those days, I was, just like a Mario and that kind of like basic, like an adventure game or an action game or something. And Chrono Trigger was a really nice introduction into RPGs, and a lot of those SNES era RPGs I missed out on and only played them more recently in my life. And it was because of Trigger that got me kind of going in that direction.
Yeah, we were poor. We couldn't afford a lot of games because we were doing fucking paper routes, and it's like, here, have $20 a month. Oh,
yeah, really. So it was
halfway to a video game. Oh, yeah. No, I had that.
Those were the days.
Yeah, I had that problem with Legend of Mana, where I was saving up for it, and then some fuckhead bought it, and it was like, "Oh, we're sold out." And I learned who that fuckhead was because he was in my class, and he's like, "Oh, I bought this game about this rabbit who's a merchant." I'm like, I'm going to fucking kill you. I wanted that. I was saving for months, you shithead.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that just crushed me so hard, and I'm like, I fucking hate you. I already hated him, so it was great. Alright, on to the next one. What are some of the low points of the two games, and how do you think they could have been handled differently? I think we're going to repeat ourselves many times, and that Cross should be a standalone.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's it. Make it its own thing, and I think it would have been a lot better.
And I've added another thing, just to be fair to Chrono Trigger, and give it some bashing, even though I don't want to. I think it needed more character-focused side quests. Especially for, just to sound like an absolute asshole, especially for the women. Because the group, like Frog and Robo, they got a lot of love with their like personal side quests, and then Marl, she just was like tacked on to the Rainbow Shell because it was her castle, and Luca got like that one thing where she saved her mom, which was pretty good. Don't get me wrong, it was pretty good, but it wasn't. It started off being a Robo quest because it was like, here, Robo has stayed here for 400 years? Yeah, 400 years. And it's like, oh, and then it kind of just leads into Luca's thing of like her regret. And it's like, oh, that's nice, but I would have liked a whole segment on focusing on Luca, but whatever.
That's interesting. And you're right that they don't really focus on the female characters as much.
Oh, and Isla. And can't forget about her.
Yeah. I guess like the in Trigger, all the side quests that happen kind of open up at the end of the game, and it makes for a tight package that the game itself is pretty much on the rails, and you can get through it pretty quickly, and there's a little bit of optional stuff at the end. You don't want to get bogged down with side quests, but it would have been maybe nice if they had jumped out a little bit in the mid-plot and had some little things that you could do specific to a character or something.
Yeah, it would have been nice. Just a little more flavor to the characters. They're still good, but could have been more. Next question. Which handled a vast array of characters better, Chrono Cross or Suikoden?
Ooh.
My answer is I don't know, because I don't remember most of the characters from both of those games.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you gotta try like kind of approach it from a different perspective, given that you have so many characters. There isn't going to be enough time to really give you much anything for any of them. I would say probably Suikoden. I guess Suikoden handled it better.
I would agree with that, because their whole focus was the 108 stars, which is, I can't remember what it is, but it's some sort of like possible religious thing that actually exists in like real world of whatever. So the 108 Stars of Destiny thing comes from a classic Chinese novel called Shui Hu Zhuan, which translates to Water Margin, or Outlaws of the Marsh, or Tales of the Marshes, or All Men Are Brothers, or Men of the Marshes, or The Marshes of Mount Liang. The 108 Stars of Destiny have 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly spirits, which I believe each character in the Suikoden games is assigned to one of these. Also, the Japanese translated name of the novel Shui Hu Zhuan is legit called Suikoden. You learn something every day. So, I mean, that has a meaning. Plus, Suikoden is always about, like, war, and you need a lot of people to fight wars, so it makes sense.
Whereas, yeah, you're right, Chrono Cross feels like a very personal journey, even though there are a lot of things at stake and a lot of people involved. Ultimately, it is like the Serge and Kids show, and so if that's how the narrative is going to focus, it should really focus on them, and these extra characters are just kind of like, why are you here? Why did you join my group? Why did Mojo jump off that spike and start hanging out with us? Like,
yeah, it's nuts. I don't get most of the characters in Cross. All right, so let's go into the not so serious topics and kind of blow through this. So again, from our friend Miss Dalton, he has some fun questions for us. Favorite song from each game, and overall.
Oh my.
You better be fucking prepared.
Go first.
Okay. So in Cross, I always watched, every time I started the game, I watched the opening, so Time Scar is probably high up there. And I also really, really like Drowning Valley, which is in the first valley when you're trying to get to Termina.
Oh, yeah.
Very, like, fluty one. The fluty one. With the big, giant, dead dragon that they think you're the Exorcists even though you're, like, 14.
Right.
Yeah, that one. And then Trigger, I have way too many, but, like, lately I've been listening to Isla's theme because we've had the message in this document forever of Isla saying La means fire, Vos means big.
Yep. Number one quote.
But also World Revolution. So when you're fighting the second form of Lavos, like that is such good final boss music. And then it's like, oh, here's the other boss, and it's like, oh, it's not as good.
Let's see. For Chrono Cross, I think I have to go with what is that song? It's like Dream of the Shore bordering another world or something. Like it's the overworld theme in another world. I think that's amazing. So much of the Chrono Cross soundtrack really is amazing. It's some of Mitsuda's best work. But that one's the standout for me. In Trigger, dang it! I mean, everything in that game is also amazing. But like, I have had RoboSteam as my ringtone, alarm tone forever. Yeah. Nothing cheers me up more than that song, so I think I have to go with that.
Nice. Good choice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Next question. Which element from the series would you respectively be aligned to? I don't fucking know. I like fire usually in most games, so I usually would go for the fire person.
Nice. It's a tough call. I'd have to go with probably like ice or darkness because I'm just dead inside.
Oh,
cold and dead. Oh. Yeah.
Well, I'm just burning myself. Yeah. Till I die. So
you have the fire of life.
The fire of life.
And I am just.
It burns too bright. It hurts. How about what our favorite characters of from each game are?
Okay. let's see. I think
Isla.
Isla.
Isla!
Isla. She's the only answer.
She is the only answer.
She's great. She really is great. I will say I think Frog is cool. Especially for the time, I was like, oh, he's a frog who can speak. That's cool. Yes, yeah, that was a great choice for the localization. I don't think he talks that fancy in the Japanese version, like maybe a little bit, but they really went nuts with his, accent, I guess, and it's pretty sweet.
Well, yeah, we made fun of it when we were growing up.
All the time.
What was it? I will hit you with my thunderbolteth.
I don't know if that. Yeah, no. Who was that? I don't know if that was him or not.
I don't know. I thought it was like when you did Spire, and it's just like when he stabs the thing. And
yes.
Then, yeah, and then he's like, "I will like hit you with my thunderbolteth," and it's just
it's everything with a yeah at the end.
Yeah, it was. My favorite character is definitely Isla, especially after before I was like, yeah, it's like really close between Isla, Frog, Robo, a lot of people, all of them pretty much, except Marl. I don't really like Marl that much.
Yeah, she's kind of lame.
She is kind of lame. She just kind of appears.
Yeah.
But after the wisdom of Isla that I witnessed doing these this shit. Well, I mean, you made me the fucking poster that says, "Fight while alive, win and live, lose and die, rule of life." And then
it's beautiful.
The secret thing is no change rule.
No change rule.
No change rule. Isla knows where it's at, so
yeah.
Definitely Isla's my favorite for Trigger. Cross, I really don't know.
Jeez.
I always would take the dragon in my group, so I'll take Draggy. I think is
Draggy.
His name.
That is his name.
Oh man, that's lame.
That is name. That is a lame name.
That is name.
That is name.
That his name.
Yikes. I don't know. Karsh.
Karsh is cool, and you get him pretty early, so.
Yeah. Oh, or Norris. I like Norris. I like Norris too.
Oh, the really posh guy.
Posh guy with the gun. Yeah, he's pretty rad.
Yeah,
I liked him.
No, he's pretty good. Is he from Porre because he has a gun?
He's part of the Porre army. Yeah.
Porre. That whole arc is just weird about Dalton coming back from the dead and just fuck it.
Yeah.
Anyway, favorite moments in the game. I just kind of put this down. I actually have no idea what my favorite moment is.
Chrono Trigger. Let's see. Favorite moment.
Anything, I guess, because
the whole game.
I guess my favorite moments in Chrono Cross, when I got really excited for what I was actually doing, was fighting all the dragons, because that was always fun. In Cross.
In Cross?
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. In Trigger, I guess I'm gonna go with the scene just before Luca uses the gate to visit her mother. Everyone's kind of hanging out at the fire.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rad scene.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's your typical kind of end game almost. We're getting ready for the final battle kind of thing. But I think especially as a kid, that kind of scene was still kind of a new thing to me. The whole final battle, oh man, rah 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 kind of thing, and it's just well made. It's well made for the time.
Yeah. I think another favorite in Trigger for me is when you're about to fight Magus.
It's super rad.
Shit is just yeah!
It's so cinematic, yeah.
And then right after that, you get to fight a giant fucking T-Rex. So it's just yeah! This is the best part of the game!
Rails. I love it.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good part of the game. And then it goes all technical, and I was too young to understand anything. So.
I guess for Cross, maybe even though there's a lot of plot dumps and stuff, once all of the plot dumps are finally done and the game kind of makes sense, then you're kind of so this is what it's all about. It finally clicks after all of the connections are laboriously tried to be brought together. So I guess
Balthazar dies because he has to explain so much, and he's old.
Seriously, so old, so dead.
Yeah. Okay, next topic. These are fun Isla things, because I love Isla. The fact that Isla names Lavos millions and millions of years ago, and it sticks until the fucking end of time. Whoa! What the fuck? That makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, all we get is her looking up at the sky, seeing the red star, and she goes, "Oh yeah, lobby fire blows me big." You're like, "Oh, okay."
Fire big. Okay.
Yeah, okay, it's fire big. Got
Legit,
it. Okay.
Legit. And like super intelligent people in antiquity or dark ages or whatever you want to call it, they're like, yeah, Lavos.
Oh
Fire
yes,
big.
of course. Yeah, fire big. That's his name.
You're all very intelligent. Why are you agreeing with this?
That's hilarious that it stuck for that long.
Yeah. And speaking of naming things, I have a beef with Isla's name meaning because there's a really fun like theory as to what her name means because we already have La, which means fire in her language. So there's a cool thing here. She has a slight fire resistance in the game, and I didn't know that. And people are thinking that I is a botched form of like I, as in like me. So they think her name means I fire.
I fire.
I fire. And I'm like, I fucking love that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really like that lore. And then Cross comes around and you get Leia or whatever. And she's like, I'm gonna name my kid Isla. It means new song of land. It's like, no. Fuck off. You ruined the fun.
Oh no, that's terrible. No,
yeah,
I don't like
no,
that at all.
I want I fire. That's way cooler and makes sense because she says law means fire. They ruined it.
Ruined.
All right, our next topic. I'm just reading these. Nikki from Chrono Cross is gacked and David Bowie.
Yes, we talked about that quite a bit.
Yes, and we have loads of images that are going to be appearing on the screen right now because it's just so interesting. But when I look deeper, he's actually based on Nikki Styx from Motley Crue. And it makes 100% sense.
Right,
like,
right.
There's an image of him and it's like the same hair, the same outfit and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, Gacked and David Bowie could have been it as well. Yeah. There's a mix.
If you had told me it was just Gacked and David Bowie, I would have been like, yep, okay, that seems right.
Yeah.
It's so weird that that both Cross and Trigger have characters that are based on American rockers. Like, I don't understand like what the infatuation was in the 90s with naming people after rock stars. Like, why? What is the point?
I know that Uematsu was a fan of progressive rock, and he would just, like, name drop a bunch of shit, and it's just like, whoa, okay.
Okay.
Your shit. So, I think there's just, like, I don't know, like, in Japanese composers, there's just, like, a little, like, circle of them that just love progressive rock, and they're just like, yeah, American rockers. It's like, what the fuck? This is so weird and very specific, but whatever.
Very specific, yeah.
Alright, we have a theory that Doc from Chrono Cross is Matthew McConaughey. Especially because he came out with a film recently, maybe recently was in February, but called Beach Bum, which is the enemy in the game as well, and he looks so much like Doc. It's insane.
Oh, it's so funny because we were just talking how he had that kind of vibe, that real like all right kind of thing going on, and then this Beach Bum movie comes out and we're like, it's just Doc. It's Doc.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I just gotta Photoshop a little hat onto him, and now it's Doc. It's great.
Perfect.
And I kind of want to watch the film, but then I also don't because I don't think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't decide to like try and cast an entire movie with a whole bunch of celebrities, but Matthew McConaughey definitely stood out for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there'd be way too many people to do for Chrono Crosses to like match up people who would do them. It's like, nah.
Yeah.
Especially when half the crew is like, yeah, a voodoo doll. One's a dragon, one's a fairy. It's like, oh god, we can't do this.
Nah.
And one's an onion knight, one's Pip, which is whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't get Pip. Anyway.
Well, you just get him voiced by like Kevin Hart or something.
Yeah. Oh, that would
be loud
perfect.
and obnoxious. It'll be great.
Speaking of voices, we have the best voice actresses, Japanese or English, 4 characters. So we went through to Chrono Trigger, most of Trigger, and then some people from Cross that we liked, or we just had a voice in mind for them. So for me, Marl, my choice is Michelle Ruff, who did the voices, Sophia in Star Ocean 3, and Jill Valentine in Revelations 1.
Guess I'm just a fatty.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid choice. I think it'd work.
She can do like mature, but also whiny and annoying, which is what Marl is to me. So whatever.
I picked a Japanese voice actress for Marl here. I went with Aya Indo, who did. I was thinking of Cheryl from Macross F. She's got like a good like Ojo-sama kind of voice, and I figure that Marl
really older. Like I don't know.
Yeah. I think she could play it, a little younger, and it'd be fine. But I don't know. That was that's what I was thinking at least.
And then we went on to Luca. My choice was Saori Hayama, who does Snow White with red hair. She's Snow White with red hair. She's also Red Archer from Fate Apocrypha. Absolutely terrible. Terrible show. Yuko from Kakiguri.
I agree with this choice.
Yeah, no, it's solid. And she's so good. She's second waifu for me. Like, so good. Next is Frog. You put Takahiro Sakurai.
Yeah, I don't know. Frog's a tough character to cast, I think. But I figured that Takahiro could handle it. He's done so many, like, brooding emo dudes is kind of what I put. And I thought, yeah, he could probably do an emo Frog.
Yeah, no, I can see that. My choice was Hikaru Midorikawa. I don't actually, know their names. I'm like, oh, it's so-and-so from this. So, Lancer from Fate Zero, Judas from Tales of Destiny, even from, the original.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know Akihiko from Persona 3. As Boxer Man. But you don't, because you haven't played it.
I have not.
Shame! For shame!
I know.
On to Magus, because I want to speed this up a bit.
Yes.
There you go. You're
Sweet. Yes, I went with Hocho Otsuka from... who I was thinking of the role of Surumi from Golden Kamuy, which is a pretty recent anime. He's an older guy, but he's got a nice, deep voice, and I feel like Magus has kind of got this deep brooding, kind of feel to him. So I thought that was a good fit. But yeah, it's kind of off the top of my head for that one.
My choice was Patrick Seitz, who's basically Dracula in everything. So yeah, Castlevania games, Dio.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty solid choice.
Yeah, he's good.
Don't waste your time. A zombie is all you'll ever be.
Yeah.
The next character is the one that started this all because we were just like, holy shit, this would have been the best voice ever. Isla voiced by Yu Kobayashi, so...
hands down.
Yeah, she's going really old here. Lala from School Rumble, who is a transfer student from Mexico?
I think so. I think it's a good story for her, yeah.
Or she's also Kaede from Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei.
Yeah. So yeah, just her shoutiness, it's perfect for the Isla character for sure. It'd be so good.
Yeah. Next is Robo. I put Tomokazu Sugita, who he's in a lot of stuff, but he's most recently been in Lizardman in Goblin Slayer.
3日ほど寝ていたと聞いておりましたが。
He's the really, really low voice. He's been in a lot of Tales games, I think, as well.
Yeah. I went with Minoru Shiraishi from Nichijou. He was Sakamoto the cat. I feel like he could, kind of ham up some of Robo's dialogue a little bit, but also could play it straight, That's kind of what I was thinking. See,
I went with more serious, just voice, robot. Next, we're going into Cross now. So Lynx, I said Joji Nakata, who is Kotomine Kire from the Fate series, and Alucard from Hellsing.
That's pretty solid.
He's so good.
Yeah, I like that choice a lot. I said Tomokazu Seki, who was Kogami from Psycho Pass. He's kind of like your by the numbers kind of like
法が人を守るんじゃない。人が法を守るんだって。
You know, he can be a tough, serious guy, and can go a little bit deep if he wants. And I feel like Lynx is kind of in that range. But I like Joji Nakata. I think that's a pretty solid choice.
Yeah. No, both of them are very good. They're both in Fate. Seki is Gilgamesh, who is like super OP character.
Right. Okay.
The Fate series, so
yes.
He's also in there. Next is Kid. I said Nao Toyama, who is Riley in Valkyria Chronicles 4, or High Elf Archer in Goblin Slayer. You can tell where I got a lot of my shit from. But definitely Riley from Valkyria Chronicles 4.
弱虫クロードがあの局面を打開するなんて全く信じていなかった。
That's pretty solid. I like that.
She can get angry easily too, so.
Yeah, because you need that for a kid, because she kind of jumps from through a couple different ranges of emotion there. I went with Eri Kitamura, kind of an older choice, I guess, but it's kind of the same vibe, I guess.
ああ、確かに通常じゃない。頭はぼやっとしているし、体中はほてるように熱い。
I was thinking of Karen from Bakemonogatari again, one of my favorite shows, so I thought that would be a pretty solid choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And then we both agreed on Riddell's voice would be Mamiko Noto.
付き合うってどういうことでしょうか?
Yo.
Very, very soft voice. Like
I wish she was still around doing like lots of anime, because I love her kind of like really soft tones.
Yeah, no, she's turned into the mom role, so that's how old we are now. So
that's the best we can hope for, is a mom role.
Yeah, she's not the main character anymore. She is the mom of the main character, and then you never see them again.
Yeah.
Ass. Next is Stina. I said Yuko Kaida, who is Isabella from Promised Neverland, but she's also Sae from Persona 5. So very serious voice.
出世のため不正義すら正義と唱える不実。
Quite deep, I guess. And I'm like, I can see the seriousness in Stina, because she's like, oh, the Dragonians and shit. So
I think that's a pretty solid pick. I went for Amy Koshimizu, another kind of older seiyuu at this point.
私のこと怖いなんてことあったの?
I just figure like if this, she's done a lot in at this point in her career, she could probably do someone who's got a bit more, I don't know, serious gravitas. So it felt like a good fit for Stina for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. So she's also, she does the voice of Karen from Code Geass and Horo from Spice and Wolf.
Spice and Wolf.
Spicy Wolf.
Spicy.
And our last voice is Karsh, the pretty boy with silver hair and as an axe and like white pants.
White pants. Yeah, big old parachute pants.
Yeah, he's interesting.
Yes.
I said Jameson Price, who does the voice of Nier.
You all right, Vice? Hang in there.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
I can totally see it.
Yeah, and for the Japanese pick, I went for Daisuke Ono. He's done a ton of things. But his voice just feels like the right fit for that kind of tough dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, alright. Wow, that was very long. But if you made it all the way to the end of this, congratulations. You must be so bored of us just picking our own, like, fucking voice actors for characters that'll never get voices. It won't happen, but we could fucking dream. It's good.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. If you came to this end and you would like to hear podcasts from us, which I doubt anyone has actually listened to this point, please put it in the comments and say you should get a podcast or something.
Yeah, we could do that. I wouldn't mind. So
I mean, we could. But
if people are interested, yeah.
If people are interested, even if they survived this long, so
yeah.
I think we should be giving them money or something like that.
Yeah, really. Yeah, thank you for watching here. We're so sorry.
Yeah, we're very, very sorry.